You walk into the pet store, and it's everywhere. Grain-free this, ancestral that. Bags with wolves on them. Labels with promises like, natural, clean, and, no grains, ever. And you start to wonder, is grain-free cat food really better, or is it just another trend? For a lot of cat owners, grain-free seems like the healthier choice. Maybe your cat has digestive issues. Maybe they're vomiting after meals, or their coat looks dull. You switch to a grain-free brand, hoping for improvement. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it makes things worse. So what's the truth? Is grain-free food really better for cats, or is it just clever marketing? The answer, as you'll see, isn't black and white. To understand whether your cat should be eating grain-free food, you have to understand what grains do in cat food, and why the idea of cutting them out took off in the first place. It started with dogs. As more people began focusing on their own health, avoiding gluten, choosing paleo or low-carb diets, they started projecting those values onto their pets. That turned into a surge in grain-free formulas. If humans are avoiding grains for health reasons, then surely cats should too, right? But here's the thing. Cats are not small humans. They're obligate carnivores. Their bodies are built to survive and thrive on animal protein and fat. They don't require carbohydrates at all to meet their nutritional needs. So why do most commercial cat foods contain carbs, including grains? Because it makes the food cheaper to produce. Carbs help bind kibble. They increase shelf life. They add calories. And for some cats, a small amount of high-quality carbohydrate isn't necessarily harmful. But too much, especially from processed or starchy grains, can cause problems. That's where grain-free came in. The idea was to remove those problematic fillers, like corn, wheat, and soy, and replace them with something more aligned with a cat's natural diet. In theory, that sounds great. In reality, it's more complicated. Let's start with the pros. One of the biggest advantages of grain-free food is that it reduces the risk of food sensitivities, at least when it comes to grain-based allergens. Some cats genuinely react poorly to certain grains, especially wheat gluten or soy protein. Symptoms can include itching, vomiting, diarrhea, or chronic ear infections. Switching to a grain-free diet, in these cases, can offer real relief. The cat stops scratching. The coat improves. The litter box looks better. Energy increases. That's not placebo. That's a legitimate improvement because the irritant was removed. Another pro is that many grain-free formulas are higher in protein, especially animal-based protein. That's closer to a cat's biological needs. More protein, fewer carbs, better weight control, and more stable blood sugar, especially important for overweight cats or those prone to diabetes. But here's where things get tricky. Just because a food is labeled grain-free doesn't mean it's low-carb or high-protein. That's one of the biggest myths in the pet food world. In many grain-free formulas, manufacturers remove corn and wheat, and replace them with potatoes, peas, lentils, or tapioca. These ingredients aren't grains, but they're still carbohydrates, and in some cases, even more glycemic than the grains they replaced. That means your cat's blood sugar may still spike. Their insulin response may still be affected, and if they're eating a high-carbohydrate grain-free food, they can still develop obesity, insulin resistance, and even diabetes, the very problems the food claims to prevent. So the grain-free label doesn't automatically mean better. It just means, no grains. What replaces those grains is where the real story starts. Now let's talk about one of the biggest controversies around grain-free pet foods, the link to heart disease. In dogs, there's been an ongoing investigation into a potential connection between grain-free diets and dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. This is a condition where the heart becomes enlarged and weakened. Some veterinary cardiologists noticed a pattern. Dogs eating grain-free diets, especially ones high in legumes like peas and lentils, were developing DCM at higher rates. The FDA launched an investigation, and while it hasn't issued a definitive ruling, the concern was serious enough to cause widespread discussion in the pet food world. Now, you might be asking, does this apply to cats? The link hasn't been proven in cats the same way, but it raises important questions. Some of the same carbohydrate ingredients flagged in these studies, like pea protein concentrate and legume starches, are also common in grain-free cat food. If these ingredients are used heavily to replace grains, and if they're not nutritionally complete, they could create imbalances that affect long-term health. And that's the core issue. It's not about grains versus no grains. It's about the overall balance of the food, the amino acid profile, the digestibility, the fat content, the presence of essential nutrients like taurine, which cats must get from their food. Grain-free doesn't guarantee that any of those boxes are checked, and neither does grain-inclusive. So where does that leave you as a cat owner? It leaves you needing to read beyond the front of the bag. The marketing will tell you what you want to hear, but the ingredient panel, and the guaranteed analysis, will tell you what your cat is actually eating. Look for named animal proteins as the first ingredients, like chicken, turkey, salmon, or rabbit. Not meat meal, not animal digest. Real, whole ingredients. Check the carb content. You may need to contact the manufacturer, because it's not always listed on the label. But in general, if there are multiple starchy ingredients high on the list, even in a grain-free food, it's probably still a high-carb formula. Make sure the food is AAFCO compliant for your cat's life stage. That means it meets the minimum nutritional standards for growth or maintenance. It's not a guarantee of quality, but it's a start. And if your cat has health issues, especially digestive or allergic conditions, talk to a vet before switching foods. Some cats do better on hydrolyzed protein diets. Others may need single protein formulas. Some truly benefit from being grain-free. Others need more balanced fiber, including grain-derived sources like oats or brown rice. The answer isn't in a label. It's in your cat's biology, and how they respond to what you feed them. Now let's get personal. Maybe you've tried grain-free food and your cat improved. That's valid. That's your data. But maybe you switched because you thought it was automatically better, and now you're noticing more hairballs, softer stool, or your cat begging for food constantly. That's not just behavior. That's feedback. Cats don't always react instantly to poor nutrition. Sometimes it builds slowly, in their skin, their digestion, or their energy levels. A diet high in carbs, even if it's grain-free, can still trigger inflammation. It can still feed the wrong kinds of gut bacteria. It can still cause weight gain and lethargy. On the flip side, a well-formulated grain-free food, high in protein, moderate in fat, low in carbs, with minimal fillers, can be an excellent choice. Especially for cats with grain sensitivities or specific digestive needs. The key is that it has to be formulated for cats, not just marketed to humans. And that brings us back to the real question. Are you choosing food based on your cat's needs, or based on what sounds healthy to you? Because if you're choosing grain-free food because it feels natural, because you heard it was better, or because you assume grains are always bad, take a step back. Look at what's actually in the food. Look at how your cat is doing. If they're thriving, great. If they're not, grain-free might not be the magic fix. Sometimes, it's about the bigger picture. How often they eat, how much water they drink, whether they're getting enough enrichment and movement, and whether their food gives them everything they need without excess. If you're switching to grain-free, do it slowly. Transition over 7 to 10 days by mixing the old and new foods gradually. Watch for changes in stool, appetite, and behavior. And if something seems off, stop and reassess. You know your cat better than any label does. So what's the bottom line? Grain-free cat food isn't automatically good or bad. It can be part of a great diet, or it can be another over-processed formula wrapped in a wellness label. What matters is what it contains, how it's made, and how your cat responds. And that's where your attention should be, not on buzzwords, not on trends, but on ingredients, balance, and actual results. If this script helped you separate fact from hype, and gave you real clarity on what to look for when choosing your cat's food, subscribe. Because feeding your cat well isn't about chasing the next fad. It's about understanding what works, what doesn't, and why your cat deserves more than just pre-packaging.